Hey, what's good, y'all? J Boogie in full effect mode. Bun down is this sound. You know how we do. This is, of course, the Lounge Presents, and we're live streaming on Twitch. The episode will be available on all streaming platforms, obviously. And today, in the lounge space, we are actually welcoming back someone who I think it's safe to say that we've become homies
For sure.
since the first time we ever had a conversation.
Definitely.
So, without any further ado, hailing from Tennessee by way of Brooklyn, the one, the only, the master of the universe himself, Jake Palumbo.
It's quite an intro. Thank you, man. It's good to be back.
Yes, no, for real, man. It's been a minute. We've had some interactions previously
For sure.
through the wrestling pod, and obviously we were talking about it a little bit before we went live. We had you and L on when you guys dropped Solving Cases, but
Definitely.
regardless, it's always an open door for you, man.
Appreciate it. Much appreciated, man. Like I said, it's good to be back.
Hell yes, hell yes. So let me ask you this: while the clapping tapers off, when we last had you on, what we'll do is we'll get a little bit into the backstory, right? Just to update, because for one thing, the previous episodes are no longer available for archiving. So just to refresh folks on who Jake Palumbo is, all right?
Yep.
So we always ask our guests that step into the lounge space how they were first introduced to hip hop culture.
For me, like I have an obsessive personality, period. Whenever I become interested in something, I have to learn every micro detail of it. But
Yeah.
I was obsessive over music from the time I was a small child. And I always make this distinction, like I didn't have cable growing up, but
Right.
my grandmother did. So when I would go to stay with my grandmother, I would always make her put the TV on MTV. Now,
Right. Right.
I didn't care what was on MTV. I just wanted to see music. And so
Right.
inevitably that starts turning into Yo MTV Raps. So that kind of piques a curiosity, which later turns into I would mow my grandmother's lawn. And every week I would take that little $20 and go to the music store and buy it.
Hey.
And so one day, just out of curiosity more than anything, I bought Public Enemy. It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back.
There you go.
Literally played that tape until the cassette snapped. I still have
Right.
it to this day.
Right.
And so, by this time, but I'm a little younger. So, like, this is already 1994, 95 when this is happening. That album's been out for a while. And so then for my birthday in 1997, I asked my parents to get me Wu-Tang Forever for that year, and they did. And that sparked, just I already knew I wanted to be in the music business and be a musician, but like that sparked me having to be in hip hop. And from there, 20 years later, a bunch of steps later, that turned into a career. But I was doing my thing locally in Tennessee, just trying to get noticed there. But that was still a couple years before the dawn of social media and a lot of the internet tools.
Yep.
So I always say trying to do underground hip hop in East Tennessee at that time was an easy way to starve to death. So, 18 years ago, I moved to Brooklyn, and I've been here ever since. But yeah, that was the genesis.
So when you were growing up, what were you hearing around the home? What type of music was being played in the home when you were growing up?
It was very eclectic. My father was into a lot of prog rock. He was
Okay.
into Pink Floyd and Yes and King Crimson and Rush and like that kind of stuff. My mother some days would be playing Cat Stevens, some days she'd be playing Black Sabbath.
Okay.
And my mother was very so I mean they were always supportive of my musical aspirations, period. But even when that began to transition into hip hop, even though they didn't completely understand it at first, they made an effort to learn about it and
Right.
to understand why, till by the end of her life, like my mom loved being a hip hop mom. Like she thought,
Hey,
she loved meeting rappers and producers, and she just thought the whole thing was awesome. So,
sick.
but no, I had a supportive household in that aspect.
Okay. Let me rewind a little bit. For Black Sabbath, which era of Black Sabbath are we talking
The
about?
Ozzy era, the
Okay.
earlier stuff. She liked Paranoid and
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
things. So yeah, more of the early stuff.
Okay, cool, cool. Yo, Paranoid's live though.
Yeah, that's classic.
Jeez. God damn. So we're looking at this nation of millions to hold us back, the Public Enemy record. That's a pretty significant record to you know, as an introduction to hip hop. The album in of itself is canon now, obviously. Salute to Chuck D, Flavor Flav, Terminator X, Professor Griff, the S1Ws, Bomb Squad. God damn.
Yep.
What was it about that record that drew you in?
You know what it was at the time? And I'm 13-ish at the time. Like I was already beginning to listen to punk rock. And I was
Ah,
really into a lot of stuff that had an anti-establishment message or a
there you go.
revolutionary message. And the first time I took home that Public Enemy tape, I don't know what it was, but it just felt like they were doing the same thing that punk bands like Minor Threat and stuff like that
Yeah.
were doing, but
Oh yeah.
it felt so much more effective. Like I
Yes.
remember as a kid thinking, like, if I were going to have somebody on the battlefield for me, this is who it would be.
Yeah.
Even on down to like, bro, I went to school in Tennessee in the 90s. Like I was not taught who Huey P. Newton was in school, like, or Bobby Seale or,
Yeah.
Farrakhan or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
I literally
Oh,
learned.
you did that in school?
I literally, no, I mean, for real. Like, they barely even taught American history. But
Yeah, I know.
saying that to say that, like, I learned so much just from listening to those records
Yeah.
that, I mean, I don't know. It felt like, for some reason, it felt like it was so much more effective. The message was just getting across with a louder sonic boom.
Yeah.
And it really
Oh.
opened my eyes up to, what hip hop is capable of. So that's why I fell in love with it.
I feel like the Bomb Squad sound was kind of like the Wallace sound created by, that crazy dude
Mhm.
with the hair. You know what I mean? But
Phil
like
Spector,
hip hop
yeah,
version, right?
right.
Oh, he said the name. Look at that. He said the I was trying to avoid saying the name, but
But yeah, no, I really did. I mean, the layering of samples and things of that
Yeah.
nature. And I remember when I
Jeez.
first started putting two and two together that this is where they got this from and stuff like that. Like it was hugely influential.
Well, one of the I mean, there were a lot of reasons to have that record in regular rotation, but one of the reasons was most definitely trying to decipher all the samples because
For
it's
sure.
so dense, so dense.
Right. No, definitely. And from the Bomb Squad, I start studying the RZA and I start studying Pete
Eh,
Rock and everybody else from there. And
yeah,
and not just that, but studying the people that they sampled and
yeah,
where this source material comes from.
definitely.
Yeah. So
So let me ask you this. I mean, a lot of people when they're exposed to the culture, they fall in love with it. They go to jams, they buy all the records. You know what I mean? But not necessarily are built or have any intention to actually wade into the water of the music industry. What propelled you to do that?
I'm not cut out for anything else. No, I think in all seriousness, I am built a certain way that I've never had a problem with hard work. I've never had a problem with breaking a sweat. I have had a huge problem with wasting my years as a human, like a breathing organism,
Yeah.
doing things that I don't like doing. So I always wanted to kind of design a world where, I basically only had to answer to myself. I still have to answer to the bank and the IRS and
I mean, yeah,
things
the
of that
usual.
nature. But
Yeah.
it was one of those things that I just know that like you spend a minimum of 1/3 of your life working.
Yeah.
So it was very important to me because I had a lot of jobs. Like I worked at Sears, I worked at the supermarket, like I worked at, I unloaded trucks, I worked in a warehouse, I was a telemarketer for 8 hours.
Hey.
I did a bunch of different jobs just trying to pay the bills, and you know, it just kind of left me feeling like I was spinning my tires, like I could do bad for myself kind of theory, because I
Yeah.
wasn't getting rich working for anybody else. So I'm like, if
Yeah.
I'm going to be poor to begin with, why not just make an earnest attempt at doing, something for myself? So from the get go, even when I was in Tennessee, like I was pressing up my own CDs and trying to perform locally and tour and do all that. But you just hit a wall after a certain point. And again, I was young at this time, and this is 2003, 2004. Like we're still not quite at the dawn of MySpace. So I moved to New York. I'm one of those people that I benefit well from being thrown into the deep end of the pool and having to not
Mm,
drown.
the
Um,
adversity.
I'm baptism by fire, they call it in the
There
South.
you go.
But
Yep.
so I moved to New York in 2006 with about 75 bucks to my name and got a job and found an apartment and, started putting it together. I was still making Jake Palumbo music at that point and, still doing the do, but it was around that time that I kind of picked up my day job, for lack of a better term. And that's when I
Right.
became an engineer and started working at different studios. Then those studios start going out of business. And in 2011, I just got my own studio space and filtered all the clientele into there. And from there, over the next decade, basically was where I built what I have today. I would
Space
basically,
Lab.
I parlayed a lot of relationships, of people who came into the studio to get their stuff recorded and mixed.
For sure.
When they have a great session with you, it's a much easier sell to be like, hey, can I play you some beats? Or,
Yeah.
hey, this is what I'm doing. What would have to do to get a song together?
Yeah.
So on and so forth. So my main thing is just powered by passion. Like I know what it feels like to wake up and hate your reality, and I know what it feels like to wake up and enjoy your reality.
Hmm.
And now let's be clear, like I've been self-employed for, over 15 years now. And
God damn. Hell yes.
thank you. But it comes with sets of headaches that, I
For sure.
never had to experience when I was working a 9 to 5. Like,
Yeah.
I always laugh and joke of like, yeah, this is going well and it has been going well for many years, but a few bad missteps and this could all crumble.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that to say that knowing that there was a risk, I'm sorry I took the long way around answering your question, but
It's so good.
the just knowing that I ran the risk of working for somebody else and still being poor and unfulfilled, I felt like it was worth the risk to, I could at least fail on my own. And, what's the
Yeah.
worst that can happen? I go back to school, I get a job, life
Yeah.
goes on.
For real.
But I always say the people who win the race in the music industry are not who gets to the finish line first. It's who can remain in the race the longest. And, that's kind of one of the things that even as I got older in doing this, every year I was able to look at it and be like, well, this is going better than it was last year. Like there's no real discernible reason to quit. So, that's what's kept me going up to this point is that, it's been a slow grind, but it's been a very steady uphill grind. So,
Yeah. Exactly. One thing I like about your come up, it is the most hip hop come up. You know what I'm saying? It is a
thank you.
hip hop come up because if there's anything that people in this culture and people who participate in this culture can understand more than anything else, it's the whole yo, I'm doing for self with what little resources I've got, and I'm gonna go.
Hip hop
And
literally started stealing electricity out of an outlet,
yeah,
power the turntables to throw the party in the rec room. Like,
exactly.
so I appreciate that. And, that is kind of the thing. It's like I just exist on my own little island, and that's one of the cool things when I first got into the music business. There was this big wall of us versus them. There were the people that were signed within the major
Yep.
label system, and then
Yep.
everybody else was like an aspiring kind of, indie artist, and now
Exactly.
that all that's basically been destroyed,
Yep.
the music business, everybody just kind of has their own lemonade stand now.
Hmm.
And there is no us versus them. It's just how well do you run your own lemonade stand and how
Yep.
successful is your lemonade? So, for lack of a better term, but
Now, this guy is humble as fuck. Okay, because one thing that you haven't mentioned, and of course, why you're not that type of person, but I'm gonna do it for you. Is there's no way in hell you'd still be doing what you're doing if you didn't have it. You know what I'm saying?
wow, thank you. You know what it is? There's just an earnest desire to keep getting better. I was having a conversation earlier today. I had a mix session earlier in the studio today, and we were talking about people in the music business, even the ones who do it full time for a career. If it were about the money, like they would have quit a long time ago. Because even
Yep.
when you pay bills off this, like the music industry has the worst pay structure known to man.
Mm.
And so saying that to say that, like, even the people that treat it as a business, we are powered by this desire to contribute to the pot and to try to, knowing the acceptable standard of what is hip hop and, fighting that battle with the person in the mirror to try to be better than you were last year and to try to top yourself and to, continuously try to keep improving. Um, I don't know exactly what the it is. Like I don't quite know how to put my finger on it. Like it's something I can't turn off. Like, you know, I've never stepped away from this for very long, not longer than 7 days to take a vacation or at a holiday or something like that.
Yeah, you're always hustling.
If I was away from it, even outside of the business, like I can't go more than 4 or 5 days without like thinking of bars in my head or, hey,
Yeah.
I want to sample this song and make a beat out of it or,
Yeah.
things of that nature. Like I will say that in recent years, I've really gotten back to having a lot of fun doing this. This has
Hey.
really, because there was a period of time where making music felt a little bit like a chore or like a job or something that I kind of had to do.
Yeah.
And now it's more like I'm back to like I get to do this, you know, doing the stuff really is my happy place. And so that's what makes all the headaches more digestible of like, yeah, I end up with problems that I never would have had if I was working for somebody else. But
Yep.
when I wake up each day and for the most part enjoy my reality, like that takes the edge off.
Dog, those are good problems to have.
Yeah, I try to
Real.
be cognizant of that.
They're good problems to have.
So,
One thing about you too that we've definitely got to mention before we get into the violence of healing is that I think it's safe to say that you, Jake, are a tour de force because you are an MC, but you are so much more than an MC. You do so much more than just rock the mic.
yeah, I mean, some people it's kind of weird because different people know me for different things. Some people
Yeah.
do know me for the music and the rapping. Some people know me for my production because,
Yep.
I do a lot of collab albums where it's
Yep.
me on the beat and then somebody else on the mic. Like
Yep.
me and Elda Sensei did Solving Cases. Me and Rusty Jukes did Jake and the Jukes Man. Me and Alexa Hexmaster did Fire and Lead. Me and Q Unique did Royal Blood. So some people know me that way. There's people who don't know me for my music at all. They know me for my day job as an engineer. They know I'm the studio engineer and the guy on the mix. And then there's people that just know me as the guy that talks on the internet because I do a lot of instructional videos, to try, and they're nothing fancy. It's just me in my living room or in the
Yeah.
car or something, but there's it's so easy for artists to get frustrated and discouraged when they keep repeatedly trying to ram themselves into the front door and it's not opening. And I'm there to kind of tell people, hey, there's a side door open over here that you can just walk right into,
Yeah.
so to speak, in terms of trying to demystify a lot of the things about the music business and the pursuit of doing this DIY yourself. So
Yeah.
there's people that just know me for my Instagram videos and don't follow me at all. So regardless of what form it comes in, I'm
All
just glad
good.
somebody's tuning in. You're right. You know,
Hell yes.
I could be talking to a wall, but somebody's listening, and I appreciate it.
As long as people looking out for you, that's really all that matters.
Yeah.
Now, The Violence of Healing, man.
Woo.
Very interesting record.
Thank you. That's
Uh,
one way to put it.
I mean, other than the fact that it's a damn good record, a very interesting record. You really open up a lot on this record. Um, I'm not going to say it was an emo record or anything like that, but as an artist, it is your right to express yourself and how you feel in whatever way you feel is going to work. And you do share a lot on this record. Do you ever, you know, ask yourself if you're letting out too much of yourself?
Oh, I had a giant moral dilemma before I even released this. I mean,
Yeah.
as I was making it, not so much. And that's what very briefly before we went live, we were talking about like this album is now a product on a shelf.
Yep.
And for the longest time, it was just a piece of art in my headphones. And it was just between me, my headphones, and God if he's listening.
Right.
And so saying that to say that when the album was finished and it was time to put it out, I had numerous big moral dilemmas, panic attacks, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call them. When I was mastering it, after I had handed it in, because you got to turn the album in about 4 weeks, prior to release. So around the
Right.
time I handed it in, and then, it goes live at midnight on technically Thursday night when the clock strikes Friday.
Yep.
That evening leading up to it, I had a knot in my stomach, not because I regretted anything. I maintain if anybody can point out a lie I told on the record, I'll take the blame. But saying that to say, I was worried in some ways, like had I overshared? Because in some cases I probably did. I was, these are real life things that really happened in real
Exactly.
life involving
Exactly.
real people that
Yep.
in some cases still have real proximity to me.
Yep.
And, even beyond that, some of those people have family members and loved ones that I have no ill will towards and don't want them to feel any collateral damage of something I might have said on a record.
Of course.
But yeah, no, I definitely, as the weeks go by, and especially seeing the streams start to go up, that feeling is lessened.
Yeah.
And I've not, nobody showed up on my doorstep to take me yet. But
Shotgun in hand.
but saying that to say, like, yeah, I had big reservations in the hours leading up to it and the weeks leading up to it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's important that you put out the record though, because if there's one thing about this record that I think is a major high key point is that it's relatable as fuck.
Thank you. The album kind of skips around, sort of like a Tarantino movie almost.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Obviously, a large chunk of the record is about one specific situation, and
Yeah,
a particularly bad and messy breakup that I went
yeah.
through that had some long-term effects on me. But then, there were other situations from years past that had just been kind of laying dormant that, I felt were deserving of a song. I truthfully did not get to everything. In all seriousness, to try to cover everything that I feel like I need to talk about, that this
One record? Nah.
well, it would probably need to be a trilogy.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
and I do plan on, revisiting it and doing a part 2 and 3. I don't know when that will be. I for the moment would kind of like to focus on more positive, things in my future. But saying that to say, I treated the record the way that I treat going to therapy. And what I mean by that is this is I started going to therapy a year and 4 months ago. And
Mhm.
I told my therapist from the first session that I'm going to keep it 10,000 with you because there is no point in doing any of this if I'm holding back or I'm not giving you my whole truth because you can't help me unless I'm giving you the complete unfiltered what's really happening in my mind and my heart.
Oh yeah.
With that said, this entire time I've been in therapy, I've done just that. And I've said whatever I needed to say that was on my heart and mind, regardless of how unhinged it might have come across at the time.
Mhm.
And, having that space to just completely say everything with no filter, therapy has been more helpful than any medication ever has. I've had no luck in that department. But staying on topic, I basically just treated the record that way. I treated it like it was one of my therapy sessions. Like I did not in the slightest think about like how this is going to be received. I know a lot of radio shows are not going to play these songs. Like, having a mental meltdown is not going to fit in the middle of the mix in between the boom bap record about culture and then the song about the girls. Like I get that, and to be fair,
It's all good though.
a few DJs have played some stuff, and I really do appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate anybody that's willing to take a risk. But saying that to say, I made the record completely and totally for myself because I wrote it from the space of where I was at the absolute lowest, worst point of my life, which was a very ironic time because this was simultaneously when my career was at its best and I was finally starting to get recognition for things that I had worked long and hard for.
Yeah.
So it was a very odd time in my life where
Right.
professionally it was all triumph and personally behind the scenes I was an absolute mess. And so saying that to say that I treated the record like a therapy session. I'm like, whatever I'm going to say, I'm just going to say it without regards of what the consequences are going to be for
Of
whomever might
course.
hear it. Whether it's a person who actually knows what I'm talking about and forms an opinion about it, or whether it's just some fan who decides that I'm nuts. I did it just, completely and totally for myself.
Dog, you got to speak your truth. And I'm glad you made this record for yourself because that's exactly how it should be.
Well, thank you, man. It's weird because I guess it's not weird because this is what I always preach to artists about developing their community of fans that are going to rock with them regardless of who else rocks with you,
Yep.
compared to a lot of my other releases, especially Plant-Based Libtard, the album
Yeah.
before this, which was my
Yeah.
most successful record to date. The Violence of Healing has not gotten that much coverage, and it's not gotten, like I was saying with the DJs, I get it, it doesn't always fit your format, but the audience has taken to it. And I
There
think
you go.
and obviously that's all that matters. That's literally all
Exactly.
that matters. Like what the
Exactly.
industry thinks about it or what reviewers think about it or anything like that. None of that matters. What matters
Nope.
is what your audience, how they relate to it. And I was a little nervous also because I always of course we've talked about this, the rap and wrestling connection of
Yeah.
the same way that the best wrestlers are playing a character that is an exaggerated version of their real self.
Yeah.
Jake Palumbo is a cape that I put on that is an
Yeah.
exaggerated character of my
Yeah.
real self. And so there's a lot of Palumboisms in my regular music. I'm going to have
Columboisms. I love that.
the wrestling reference. I'm going to have the reference to girls. I'm going to have the reference to, the government. I'm going to have all that stuff. And so I'm really just abandoning all this on that record. Like,
Yeah.
lyrically, it's still, there's still bars. You know what I'm saying?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
my flow,
Oh yeah.
I don't think I sacrificed anything bar wise, but it was
Not
not
at all.
about being lyrically dazzling. It was just
Right.
about content and getting what I had to say out. But saying that to say that, like, I wasn't wearing the Jake Palumbo cape quite as much on this record. Like,
I got that sense.
this is, this, like I said, this is like I put a hidden camera up in one of my therapy sessions.
This is your reality TV show
My
live.
kind of behind the scenes reality TV show.
Yeah. Your
Um,
confessional scenes, one long confessional.
and so that's basically what I did, because in my mind I'm thinking, again, going back to what's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
Do I hold this stuff in for the other thing is I've been procrastinating on this for a while. Like,
Oh,
if you go back to 2 albums prior to that, if you go back to the 100,000 Air Hobo, which is
okay.
2019, in the intro to that album, the little robot voice says Jake Palumbo's next album will be a exploration of his innermost feelings and
Oh,
personal
okay,
thoughts.
okay.
Because even back then, I was already going through stuff. I had a minor
Yeah.
stroke that year. Like, a bunch of stuff happened. My relationship was beginning to fall apart. So that was supposed to be the next album. But then the 2020 election season happened. And then the world was on fire. And then George Floyd happened. And Breonna Taylor happened. And then, Kyle Rittenhouse happens. And so what happens is I end up spending most of my year arguing with, MAGA on the internet.
Yep.
And getting all these death threats thrown in my inbox and
Yeah.
getting
What
called
the
a libtard.
fuck?
And so
Jeez.
that's what makes plant-based libtard, is that I put my feelings on hold because I felt like I had to suit up and go to war.
Yeah.
So,
when you drop libtard, I was not surprised at all.
thank you, man. So, that kind of got pushed to the back, because I had to suit up and make that record. And I'm glad I did, because, like I said, to date, it's my most successful release. And I think if there's one, maybe, up to this point, if there's one definitive Jake Palumbo record, it's probably that one. But as soon as that record came out, like, that's when everything started just completely, as I say in the intro, like, my mental health went completely into the toilet.
Yeah.
And, things just got so escalated that it was unavoidable. Like, I had to find an outlet to get these things out. And
Of course.
or I was heavily on my way to crashing and burning very quickly. So that started with going to therapy. And by the time I get in, and again, as I'm in therapy, like, my career is active. Like, I'm having to get Fire and Lead done and shooting music videos. And, I'm, for the internet, like, I'm having to keep a happy face on and, act as if nothing is wrong, like, for 2 whole years, basically.
Yeah, man.
So, and because the other thing was the one thing I will say I maybe did correctly during that time, or at least didn't allow my grief and abandonment to take from me, was that I wasn't going to let it mess up everything I worked for. Because it was in those years, 2021, 22, and 23, that, like, I felt like the world finally really started warming up to what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I waited my whole life for this, and I went through hell to get here, and I wasn't going to let anything rob me of that. So that just meant I had to put on a face for the internet for 2 years. But eventually, like I said, going to therapy and eventually making the music to get it all out and, make this artistic statement that's going to outlive me. It'll be there long after I will. And, that has really helped the process of being in a much better place today than I was.
I hear you completely.
I'm still nuts. I'm still batshit crazy, and I have days where
better be.
I still have my days where my brain will just short circuit. But on a day-to-day basis, things have drastically improved. And one of the things that we keep going back to, like, is music is therapy, is that having all this art and getting to share that with people and them loving it and them feeling like, they can relate to it somehow too. And that I'm talking, and you said something earlier about the emo. I have jokingly called this my emo album on many occasions. I'm not even kidding. Before I had a title for the record, the Google Drive folder with all the rough demos, it's just said emo album. But it's like I said, being able to just get it out, and now it exists and it's a thing, and I don't have to really think about it anymore.
Yeah.
I still have to promote it. We've got 3 more music videos to shoot, and
Dope.
Still things we got to do. But it's a big weight off my shoulders, and I can start focusing on things like the next Jake Palumbo album, which I'm already a couple songs into. And, like I said, the music has really come back to being my happy place. Like I get greater enjoyment out of it currently than I probably ever have. The only time I was maybe this giddy was when I was like 21 and trash. It was not good at making music yet, but your heart's so pure, you feel like you're in Madison Square Garden.
That early earnest version of you. Yeah,
yes.
Definitely.
Feel like I'm back to that.
That's dope, man. That's dope. Lyrically, I've always appreciated your bars. I've always appreciated your flow. You have your own unique Jake Palumboisms, if we're going to call him that. But your production on this, jeez, dog, what informed the production of this? Because you cooked.
Thank you, man.
You burned the kitchen down up in this motherfucker.
I always say, like, as a rapper, you're either going to love me or hate me. Like, people, there's very little middle ground there. But as a producer, I feel like about everybody should be able to agree on the beats.
Hell yeah.
Because, I just have a very vast set of influences. Like, I was obviously from the jump, I was inspired by the Bomb Squad and the RZA.
Yeah.
Almost as big an influence was DJ Paul and Juicy J from 3-6 Mafia. I think they're the most creative producers that ever came out of the South.
Mm-hmm.
I was big into Pete Rock. I was into Dilla, Muggs, Madlib, the Beat Miners.
And you can tell.
But saying that to say that, like, I think it was a blessing kind of being from the South because it took so long for the South to really build up what they had. We listened to stuff from everywhere. Like, I probably listened to more Southern rap living in New York than I did when I was in Tennessee. I was listening to Wu-Tang and Public Enemy and Boot Camp Click, and
and then you move up north and it's all South.
Now I'm listening to UGK and Master P, right? So that's just me. I'm always a weirdo in my environment, but
it's all gravy.
But yeah, like I appreciate that. To me, the music is the universal thing that lures people in. Like people like us, and the people that watch your show, and they listen to lyrics and they pay attention to what people are saying, and they care about content and stuff like that. For most people, like the average person, who in reality is who we're really trying to reach.
Yep,
they have to be lured in by the music.
Yep,
and then hopefully they'll absorb the lyrics while they're there. So and the other thing too is I realized, like, for the things that I'm talking about on this record, the soundtrack has got to be pleasing to the ear, or you're probably not going to want to hang around.
A little bit of balance there.
It's got to be. So I did put maybe a little bit of extra effort into that, but at the same time, like, when I pick beats, I make more beats than I could ever rap on.
I believe it.
Which is good because I can team up with other rappers and make projects together, and then those just, hey, pick 10 beats you like out of the pile and we'll make an album. But when I pick beats for myself, I basically just pick what I gravitate towards. And sometimes that's what other people might pick, and sometimes it's not. But I maybe was a little more conscious on this one of, like, given that the content was so dark and so personal, and with the exception of the single "Your Boyfriend Has a Mustache," like, there's not a lot of upbeat songs on the record.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I'm taking you through this dark abyss for 33 minutes,
Dark abyss.
you know,
Damn.
the soundtrack has got to be pleasing to the ear. Like those
Yeah,
beats have got to, lure you in. So hopefully then you'll listen to what I'm saying.
definitely. And the one thing about this record too is let's use the example the production. The production, if you're, not uh, as you mentioned, a little more invested in the music, in hip hop in general, the music's what's going to draw you in. But what's going to happen, and I'm sure it's already happened with folks who dig Jake Palumbo, is you're gonna be drawn in by the beats and the production, and then you're gonna hear the lyrics, find something you yourself can relate to, and then they're gonna dig for some more shit, and then realize that Jake Palumbo was actually an entire 64, crayon box of colors.
There's a lot of layers. Yeah, there's a lot
I'm
of layers.
saying,
That's what I tried to do. Like that's why I've always added humor into what I do because I feel like if you can make people laugh,
yeah,
you've got a better chance of them listening to your actual knowledge and stuff like that.
yeah.
Um, but I just I don't know. It just comes out of my brain from my brain to the pen. Like I'm generally writing for an audience of one. Like
That's perfect.
all those punchlines are strictly to make myself laugh. I appreciate it when other people do. And I do have like a small network of maybe like 25 people who, who's I can say I honestly care about their opinion. But when I'm writing, generally, I'm writing for an audience of one. But the cool thing about, and I don't think I was able to capture this quite as much on my first couple albums, is that with time and repetition and becoming, a veteran at your craft, you figure out how to say more with less.
There you
And,
go.
a lot of the greatest MCs, I use Sean Price as one of these examples because he was my
Mm.
favorite rapper of the modern era. But when you
Rest
look
in
at
power,
like his
Sean Price.
earliest stuff, he just used a lot more words. Like he was
Yeah,
packing
yeah,
a lot more lyrics into each
yeah.
bar. And then as he kept getting older, and if he'd lived, I think he would have continued to get better at this. His actual rhyme structure was much simpler, but he was
Yep.
saying a double and triple entendre within
Yeah,
that simple line.
yeah.
And so, saying that to say, I've tried over the years to be able to say more with less, to try to make it more relatable to people. Because in the early days, people would have jokes about, well, you need a thesaurus to listen to his music and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I can never fully abandon my wordy brainiac weirdness because I think that's what people who do like my music like about me.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
again, with time and experience, you kind of learn how to convey more without just so many words. Like, you're able to say a little bit more with a little bit less. And sometimes, a simpler punchline can be deeper,
Yeah.
so.
I'm curious. What do you think Black Elvis would say about this record?
I'd be honored about the violence of healing. I have no idea. I don't know. I really have no idea. Um, Cool Keith is one of my biggest influences.
Mm,
I did produce a record that he was on. It was called Killa. It was Rock Mecca featuring Cool Keith, Vast Air, and Mock Homey. It came out in 2018. So Cool Keith did rhyme over a Jake Palumbo beat. I would love to actually get a song with him in rhyming before it's all said and done. That's one of my big influences.
let's not sleep on what you just said. Let's break this down. The names that you just listed that are all on one record that you produced. Okay? Let's
Uh,
not let's not shortchange the situation here.
yeah.
Again, Jake being humble as fuck.
So I produced Rock Mecca released the album in 2018 called Iron World that I produced the whole thing. And one of the singles was a song called Killa. And the three features on it were Cool Keith, Vast Air, and Makami.
Look at that. How many
Um,
people? How many people can say, "Oh yeah, we did a record together with all those people"? How
you
many
know,
people can say that?
Sometimes I
Come on.
think this is why I need a manager. Like I need a Jimmy Hart with a megaphone following me around because you know what it is? It's not even that I'm trying to forget these things. It's that just like my mind is so focused on the work and what I
Of
need to
course.
be doing now and that I sometimes forget like a lot of the catalog that has been built up over the years to the point where when people ask me who I've worked with, it's so many names that like I'll draw a blank trying to think of it. But nah, that's it's been an honor. I mean, it's an honor also to being able to be friends with so many MCs that I
Yeah.
grew up
Yeah.
thinking were great, and
Yep.
them dropping by the space lab to come kick it, and that's one thing that's never lost on me. Like and that's why I get so agitated at people who complain because a lot of us like actively really want to be here and are
Of
glad to
course.
be here
Yeah.
and are
Yeah.
appreciative. Like I said, I don't look at it like I have to do this. I look like it like I get to do this.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's not lost on me.
There you go. There you go. Well, yo, man, it's always a pleasure having you, not
Bro,
just in the
likewise,
lounge
man.
space, but
Likewise.
just chatting. We haven't had a chance to catch up too much since the last time we talked, but I mean, we have opportunities like this to be able to do it. But and I wanna let you know, Jimmy Hart may not be in your corner right now, but anytime we have an opportunity to do it, we will be the mouth of the south for you, man.
Word, man. I
We will
appreciate
shout your praise. We will shout your praises, dog.
I appreciate that, man. Y'all
Okay.
have definitely supported ever since we linked up, man.
Nah,
Whenever
for
I can get
real.
up to Canada, man, I gotta come rock with y'all, man, for sure.
For real. Nah, I really appreciate you coming back into the lounge space. Obviously, I appreciate you as a homie and as an artist, and I just want to help spread the word, let people know that Jake Palumbo is no joke.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
The
We got a
Violence of
lot coming.
Healing. Yeah, definitely. The Violence of Healing is available right now. You've already mentioned you've got 3 more singles still coming out, right?
Yeah, we just dropped a music video for Lost My Minds.
Okay.
There's a music video for Your Boyfriend Has a Mustache that's
Yeah.
half done. I've had a few technical difficulties, mainly because I'm not a filmmaker. I aimed a little higher on this video, and
That's
that one's in process. It'll be out soon. But we're gonna do videos for 2 more songs. Probably "Remember Me" for me, and maybe "Ice."
Oh, okay. There we go. There we go.
Do videos for those. In the meantime, I'm always doing stuff as a producer. Me and M Ski have an album coming out called "The Slow Burn."
Yep.
The first single just came out called "Ship 'Em Out." Me and West Side Ward got a 10-song album called Dying in Designer.
Yep.
Out now. Me and Q Unique, Royal Blood. Me and Lexa Hexmaster, Fire and Lead.
Listen to this guy.
So yeah, man.
He's just that guy.
It's about the work, man. Like I want to leave behind a big catalog because I always looked up
Proper.
to artists like Prince and Frank Zappa and
Hey,
people that left with a big catalog, and that's what I want to
proper.
that's what I want to try to do while I'm here, man.
I'm glad that "Remember Me" for me is going to be an upcoming single because that's definitely one of my highlights on the record. You fucking killed that joint, okay?
Thank you, man. That's why we had to end the album with that. I felt like it was a good clincher statement.
Definitely,
So
definitely.
yeah, will be a video for that one for sure.
You got to let people know how they can cop the record, man.
It's available at spacelabrecordings.bandcamp.com. It's available on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, everywhere. Probably will be a CD release. Usually at
Hey,
Space Lab, we'll drop digitally and then we'll do CDs, a couple
dope.
months later. But yeah, it's available everywhere. And while you're there, there's a big catalog of a bunch of other stuff.
Exactly.
The Violence of Healing is a interesting place to start. If you've never heard
Right?
it's kind of like meeting somebody on the worst day of their life. But saying that to say that there's a vast catalog of a whole bunch of other music that
is
I'm
what I'm is what I'm saying. Put it this way: the violence of healing is this different shade of blue in the crayon box that you may not have, you know what I mean? You may not have like encountered it before. But then what's going to happen once you start coloring with that particular crayon? It's going to make you look for what else is going on in that Crayola box, and that's going to find your discography, and people are going to really get into what Jake
yes,
Palumbo
sir.
is all about. There you go,
Love it.
dog. Appreciate you.
Jay,
Thanks for
thank you for
spending
having
time
me,
with
man.
us.
It's
Oh
always a
man, you
pleasure. I'll come back anytime, man. Anything y'all
hell
need,
yeah.
holler.
You know we always got time for you, dog.
Yes, sir, man. Appreciate you having me, yo. Peace.
Respect. Peace.
Sir.